Good morning and welcome everyone to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast where we talk about spiritual topics in a very personal way and how we can apply them to our life so that spirituality can become practical and not just ethereal. And we are here with our live studio audience and of course our co-host Achyuta Gopi. Our tri-host Dayal is out this week. But it's just the two of us holding it down. Achyuta, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. We are good.
Great, amazing. I was in a Srimad Bhagavatam class this morning in person. I came in person. I'm here at the Bhakti Center, and I asked a question to stir the pot. So I sometimes like to stir the pot. So I'm going to ask the same question to you, Achyuta Gopi. And the class was about, the whole class wasn't about it, but a portion of the class, there was this point about doing things for Krishna, right? Doing things for God and spiritualizing the way that we do things. And also not being attached to the results and understanding that sometimes we do things for God and for higher power or for spiritual community, and it doesn't necessarily go the way that we want it to go, right? So the speaker had like 15 minutes that he gave to the audience for questions. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask a good one. And so I asked him, I said, how do we know when I am doing something for God or Krishna or higher power? How do I know when I'm doing something for God as opposed to when I'm convincing myself into thinking that I'm doing something for God?
That is a really good question. Such a good question.
Right? And just a little bit of context in that is that we can think that we're doing something spiritual, but is it spiritual? Right? Like, and who's to say? That's kind of like where I was at. It's like, who's to say if what I am doing is or isn't spiritual, or if I'm looking at someone else and being like, you're fake. Like that's it's like, well, who gets to decide that? Is it an internal thing? Is it our spiritual teacher? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, all of those are super interesting questions, and I think our problem is looking at things in like one static moment and then deciding that one moment defines everything else going forward for perpetuity and in posterity. Like forward, backward, it's all going to be the same thing. And I think that we have to understand that what we view as spiritual, what we view as spiritual activity, and our intentions in each activity will change. So it's not just that we check in with ourselves one time and we have this desire to perform some action and we're like, no, this is hardcore service. And then sometimes as you get to performing that service, somewhere along the line it shifts and we have to check in again, like, where are my priorities? Where are my intentions? Where are my motivations? Are they Krishna focused or are they really me focused? And it doesn't mean that the things that we do for devotional service can't also bring enjoyment to us, right? They should actually. Srila Prabhupada always says that devotional service should be joyfully performed. But I think that it's really important for us to continuously check in with ourselves and check in with our motivations, because I could do something as a service on social media and then halfway through I find myself getting roped up into all kinds of other things, and then I have to reassess and be like, well, let me recalibrate my GPS. Let me go back and see if there's something different here, or let me go back and reconfigure what my original priorities and goals were. It's like running any kind of business. Sometimes you have to go back each year, even each quarter, and take a look. Okay, what was our mission statement? Are we actually living up to that? How are we doing? What's happening? And Sachinandan Maharaj was saying that when we're chanting, when we're doing devotional service, and the mind is wandering, and you catch the mind wandering, you shouldn't be angry that the mind has wandered. That's what's going to happen. So we shouldn't be angry if we get caught up in the machinations of the mind, or if we get swayed in the process of doing devotional service. We are not perfect. But what he was saying was one of the small victories in that is that we've actually caught the mind wandering. That's a huge deal. The fact that we've even been able to assess the fact that, whoa, my mind's going off in a different direction. Let me pull it back. That's big, because sometimes we don't even do that. And then before we know it, it's just lost. So the fact that we can catch ourselves veering off into another direction and try and steer ourselves back is a huge victory. We shouldn't be so hard on ourselves if our priorities slip or change or whatever. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall into the holes. It's going to happen. So in that case, we have to be a little bit flexible with ourselves, and then also learn how to remember and surrender to the principles and the values that we started with. And then, of course, it's like the second question sounds like Bhagavad Gita questions 101. Like, what does a spiritual person look like? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they act? How do they sit? Like, what does that look like? So we'll get into that, but I also want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I was going to say that I really love this idea of being flexible, because I was talking to my friend Rasika Gopi Dayal's wife over the weekend, and I was telling her how I have problems sleeping, actually. And she was like, she's really into Ayurveda. And she was like, okay, well, like, tell me like what's happening. And I was like, well, basically, like, I'm doing everything right. I'm in bed before 10. I take a shower, like a hot bath, like Epsom salts and like no lights, candles. I have my orange, blue light blocking things or whatever. And then I'm in bed and I can't sleep. And then I get angry that I can't sleep, or I get frustrated that I can't sleep. And I start getting like, I'm just like in bed, like writing. And then immediately she was like, oh, you have a pitta problem, or you have a fire or a rajas problem. It's like, it's anger, you know? And I think that anger is such an interesting thing, you know, like if you live in a big city, New York is a place where you see like a lot of anger all the time. And anger is one of those things that it can just really take us out of our spiritual practice and decalibrate us. You know, it could just really like throw us off. So I love this idea of checking back in with ourselves, but also like figuring out like what was the intention in the first place. You know, it's like if I'm not able to get to sleep and I'm now angry that I can't sleep, it's like, wait, my intention is to like be calm and soothe and like, you know, whatever. So now all of a sudden I've gotten angry. But one more thing, this is probably just like gonna show how much on Instagram I am. But you know, on Instagram, how there's like the explore page, something that I recently discovered, maybe all of you know this. Well, I guess I already knew this in theory, but I saw it in practice yesterday. On the explore page, Instagram will show you what you look at more of. So the more that you look at something, Instagram will show you that thing.
Yes.
On the explore page. And my Instagram explore page knows me pretty well. It's llamas, puppies, bhakti things, and drag queens. Like that's literally my explore page.
I love it so much.
And yesterday I was getting into a hole of drag queens because I finished watching this drag show with my partner. And I was just like, drag queens. And you know, it's like a lot of sassy like energy.
Yeah.
And then like 20 minutes into this drag queen hole that I got, I was just like, wait a minute. I've been refreshing this explore page, and now I'm seeing that there's less Krishna stuff and there's more drag queen stuff. And then I like connected the dots. I was like, oh, this is, yes, I've heard people say that this is how it works. And this is how it really, really works. And I was just thinking like, I wish there was something like that in our mind, you know, that we could map it out or see it in front of us of like, oh, I'm having more of these thoughts or I'm having less of these thoughts. And I think that that's why like things like journaling is so important, or things like just checking in with yourself, whatever way that you have of checking in with yourself. Because sometimes when it's all just like locked in your mind, it's hard to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's hard to assess. It's like you're just kind of on autopilot going. Whereas if you see it on a piece of paper, or you see it on your Instagram Explore page, or you see it wherever it is that you're seeing it, it's like, oh, 80% Krishna, 20% drag queens. Interesting. Okay. We maybe need to work on it,
What's funny is there actually is. There is a system in like the brain, the reticular activating system. And basically what that is like when you learn a new word, then you see the new word everywhere. That's the reticular activating system at work. That is your For You page algorithm in your mind at work. The more that you focus on something, your brain starts to describe that as now important. So there are things that are naturally filtered out. Otherwise, we'd be constantly bombarded, right? Our brains would be constantly bombarded. So our brains naturally filter a lot of things out, unless they consider them emergency or important. The things that they consider emergency are things like hearing your name. So if you hear your name, it's like one of those things where you automatically, even if you think you hear your name, you're like, what? You're tuned in. So things like hearing your name, things like hearing dangerous signals. So the word fire, things like that, things that your brain has configured itself to be like fight or flight systems. They consider that to be emergency signals. And then the things that are considered important. So the things that you look at more. So the moment that you start actually looking for bhakti more, the more that your brain considers that to be an important signal. And then it starts filtering in all those other things from all around you that give you more bhakti. So yeah, you'll start to see it. You'll start to see signs. And when you say, like, when you think about it and you're like, oh, I was just looking for something, and then I saw a random sign on a billboard or something, it's like you were actually tuning your mind into thinking this is important. And now these things that have always been there are now being filtered back in to your mind algorithm for your For You page to let you know that that's important. I saw that the other day. Well, actually, I saw it a couple weeks ago. And I was like, wow, I really kind of want to train my mind up to look for Krishna and just see how cool it could be, like for a week, do an experiment, where you really focus on looking for Krishna and just see how it filters in, how it starts to change the algorithm in your mind. And I think that the For You page is actually a perfect metaphor for all of this. Because yeah, I was looking at my For You page the other day, and there's a lot of deities, also a lot of puppies, and strange animals. Like there's like strange animals in there. It's like there's puppies. There used to be a lot of alpacas. I was like really big on alpacas.
I'm on alpacas right now.
I mean, they're awesome. Come on. It's so good. And there's like cows and all kinds of like interesting things. But then like a while ago, I had looked at someone like going around Vrindavan dancing, holding their like Laddu Gopal. And then there was one like really interesting looking one. I was like, what is this? This is strange. And Nandi was like, no, stop looking at it. It's going to change your whole For You page, Mom. And it did for like a week. It was weird. People doing interesting things with their deities. I was like, oh, okay. But it's so interesting to think of how things get filtered out of your life and then filtered back into your life. And we don't have to be angry about it.
Yeah, we don't have to be angry about it. And I think something that the Explore page and the reticular something of the brain that you mentioned, I already forgot the term. I think the word that's coming up for me, or the idea that's coming up for me, is just remembering that we have a choice. I think sometimes we tend to forget that, and it's just like we're on autopilot, and it's just like, well, this is what I like, and this is what I do, and this is who I am, and this is what it is. And it's just like, not really. Like you have, if you want to change something, you can change it. If you want to break a habit, you can break it. If you want to develop a better habit, you can do it. If you want to, whatever it is that you want to do, it's like you have the power to do that, but it does take like a sense of discipline. And you were mentioning the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita speaks so much about discipline and disciplining the mind specifically. And it's something that, at least for me, it's something that it doesn't stop, like it doesn't end. Like the moment that you think you've reached some sort of plateau, or you're like, oh yeah, I'm good, like I've done enough work, all of a sudden you'll be like going down the internet hole or the Instagram hole, and the mind will start getting filled with all types of nonsense things like this again. And it's kind of like a constant upkeep, which can seem, I don't know, maybe that seems kind of like boring or whatever, but it just is what it is, I think, and it's kind of a fact that we have to accept. It's like, I need to do this work, I need to do the dishes. You can't be angry about doing the dishes. I mean, you could be angry about doing the dishes, you could choose to be angry about the dishes.
Sure, you could.
You could, and a lot of people do, and a lot of people get into fights about dishes and housework and this kind of stuff. But it's kind of one of those things that it's just like, this just needs to be done. Like someone's got to do it, or else you're gonna live in grossness. And think about like when your kitchen gets dirty or when your bathroom gets dirty. It's like, think of your mind in that way as well. It's just like, if I'm not doing that cleaning, that work that requires me, then like cobwebs and mold and all kinds of dark, ugly things are going to start coming in the mind as well, and we're going to start being, and I think the scary thing is we're going to start being attracted to those things, right? Because that's the things that, like you're saying, Achyuta, we're going to start seeing those things everywhere. It's like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that ugly, dark thing that's like now attracting me because I'm seeing it everywhere,
Not only are we going to start attracting that more into our lives, more into our minds, but we're going to start projecting that onto other people. And so you get to the point where you don't even believe that true spirituality can exist, because you've gone like nose blind to the mess that you're living in. And so the more that you see that, the more that you think that that's all that exists. And your mind will retrain itself to think, this is the normal. This is how we're living now. And this is all there is out there. And then when someone comes and says, well, wait, there's something better, there's a spirituality that can help, we start thinking, yeah, no, there's not. And that person can't be that spiritual. And part of that reason feels like because we just can't fathom something outside of ourselves. It's actually quite self-centered. But it's who we are as beings. I think we are often quite self-centered, and I like to change that to like self-realized at a certain point. But we have to have knowledge of the self. So Krishna knows.
Yeah.
Krishna understands. He knows that we are going to need knowledge of the self, that we're going to be thinking about ourselves almost at all times. Even when doing devotional service, even when we say we're thinking of him, we're also going to be thinking of ourselves. Yeah. And Krishna doesn't say, stop thinking of yourself. All he says is, just add me in. Just think of me. I remember when I was like a new mom and I was chanting japa, and I think it was Diana. She comes and she goes, how are you doing this? And I was like, what are you saying? What do you mean? She's like, you've got like this baby, and I think Nandi was maybe like 1, maybe less. She's like, and you're chanting japa. And she's like, do you actually get your rounds done each day? I was like, yeah. She said, how? I said, I don't get too attached to when it happens. I kind of let it happen. Like, so Nandi will wake up in the middle of the night, and if she doesn't go back to sleep, instead of getting mad about it, I'll chant some japa. I'm sitting there, the kid's awake, got nothing to do but try and keep the kid alive. Chant some japa. And so that's what I was thinking with you. If you're lying there and you can't fall asleep, in half an hour, like, you could grab your counter, and just chant some japa. And in half an hour, you could be asleep. Or in half an hour, you've gotten some japa done. It can only make it better. And true. I fight myself on that so many times. Like, there are times I'm like, I cannot sleep. And I was like, I could have chanted like 3-4 rounds by now. And I'm like, or my brain is like, or you could keep trying futilely to fall asleep and get upset about it. Or we could just give in. I feel like those are the moments of surrender in our active daily lives. Those moments where we're like, okay, I've got nothing else. So when do we know? when we're actually doing it for Krishna, when we're doing it for ourselves, when we give in, when we're flexible, when we stop fighting the feeling and think, I could use this time productively. Cool. And when I go to sleep, I often will put on a lecture. And there are times when I can't fall asleep and I've listened to 2-3 lectures, and I'm like, but at the end of the day, I've actually listened to 2-3 lectures. I've learned some things about Krishna. It actually is devotional service. Cool. So I feel like sometimes just go with it, because if it's not changing, then I'm just angry and it's not changing. Or I could use it to my advantage.
Yeah, I really like this point that you made of how do I know if I'm doing it for Krishna? My ability to be flexible when things aren't going my way, right? Because if we're too attached to things going my way, then am I really doing it for Krishna, or am I just doing it for like me and my ideas of success and how it should go and like this and etc. And that's such a powerful statement, because I think that a lot of times for people who are, whether you're newer to bhakti or whether you've been practicing bhakti for a very long time, I find this in both, this idea of like what my spiritual practice is supposed to look like, or how it's supposed to feel, or what it's supposed to be like. And I was you were mentioning Sachinandan Maharaj, who, for those of you who don't know, he's like a prominent Swami in our movement. And he led this meditation kirtan event on Sunday. And it was so nice because his books are so beautiful. If anyone has ever read them, The Living Name is just like on my top books. But he's really into like meditation and really like preparing the body, the mind, the heart, the consciousness for this like japa that you're about to do, this chanting of the holy names. And I remember when I read The Living Name, I was like really into it. Yeah, meditation. And it was really good, but of course I haven't read that book in like years since it came out. And so being in that was so powerful, because it was a very short meditation. It was like what, 10 minutes max meditation of literally just sitting up, breathing, getting back in touch with the body, getting back in touch with the mind, and seeing divinity in the heart, and then going into the practice of japa, which is really a remembrance practice between you and Krishna. And it was, for me, it was like really, really crazy. It was really, really good. And I was like, wow, I haven't chanted japa like that in a couple of years. It's been a while.
Right?
And I think it just speaks to your point, where it's like, I can have this idea of what I want my spiritual life, or just my life, to look like, but is my intention right? Like, is my intention actually like set? Or am I just going through the motions of doing things? Or am I attached to how I think it should look like, how I think it should be, etc.? There's this feeling that I think a lot of people get attached to, or that I'm attached to when it comes to spiritual life, which is, I finished, right?
Mm-hmm.
Done. I'm done for the day. Done for the day of my spiritual. Finished my, we chant 16 rounds.
Yeah.
Finish my service. Now I can, be a vegetable. And it's like, it's so interesting how it's like, wow, like the intention is so important. It's so important. And recalibrating, you were using this nice word, constantly, like just checking in.
Yeah, this question in the chat. So Hemalata Radha is asking, I tend to hear lectures while cleaning. I love it, but could that be offensive? And I kind of like to volley questions back sometimes. What about it would you think is offensive? Like, what about that part would you consider to be offensive? Just so that I feel like we answer that question properly.
Mm.
So we'll see as the answer comes in. But I I really do kind of feel like we tend to give ourselves that excuse so much. I do that all the time. Oh, well, offensive, can't chant japa right now.
Yeah, when you told me to chant japa in bed, I get that mind. Oh no, I can't chant japa while I'm lying down in bed. That's offensive.
Yeah. So here, offensive meaning I'm not fully present and attentive, but you are. I listen to lectures while I'm not just sitting straight. And so we have examples of people who have been listening to Krishna Katha while doing other things. Narada Muni spoke Krishna Katha to the mother of Prahlad Maharaj. She was asleep, but he understood that the child was still listening within the womb. And so he kept talking. So through osmosis, through action, through whatever it is, really invoking Krishna into that space is the best thing that we can do. So no, I absolutely do not think it is offensive. I think it is the best way to clean, cook, do anything, to be honest. My sister and I, we'd listen to lectures while we were cooking. We'd listen to lectures while we were cleaning. We'd put on kirtan while kids were doing school, all kinds of things, because it's important just to fill that atmosphere with Krishna Katha, and even just for a little while. So if that becomes part of your morning ritual, you wake up in the morning, you have to clean your house, you have to do yoga, you have to do all kinds of things, and you just, that's right, Dana saying Bhaktify your life, exactly. And Radhanath Maharaj and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to Krishnafy it, like Krishnaize your entire existence. This is the Krishna consciousness, to be conscious of just adding in Krishna, just add water, it's fine. Just add a little Krishna. And finding those places where you can add a little Krishna into your day starts to retune your reticular activating system to remember that this is important. You're just reminding yourself, this is important. This is necessary. This is triggering my brain and my whole nervous system to remember this is important, along with so many other things, but this is important. So it's like when we hear that alarm, we've trained our brains to remember this is important. So we just have to do that with Krishna. And I think any way that we do it, by hook, by crook, by trick, I think that that's the most important thing to do.
Okay, I agree. I agree with all of it. We're fresh out of time though, although we could keep on talking forever. So let's hear some takeaways from our Kimberly. And if anyone else has any takeaways, please put them in the chat.
Thank you, Achyuta and Kishore. So my takeaways today are: the spiritual process is not static. We gotta be flexible and continuously check in with ourselves to recalibrate our intentions and motivations. And then we all have a choice. Our brains have a reticular activating system that's kind of like an Instagram Explore page. And we can train our minds to focus on looking for Krishna and see how it changes the algorithm of our minds. We can Bhaktify and Krishnafy our lives.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Any takeaways you're taking away, Achyuta?
I'm really taking away this idea of making my mind like my Instagram Explore page. I met somebody this weekend and she said, I'd grown up in an Indian household, but I really was not about religion. And then one day I saw one of your kirtans on my Explore page on Instagram. And she said, and that's why I'm here at Rath Yatra right now.
Wow.
So for me, I kind of want to remember that it actually does work. It does work.
It works. It works. The more that we can flood the world with Krishna consciousness and with spirituality, the more people will see it and will be attracted to it. So I really like that. And my takeaway is just, I really like what Hemalata wrote, to let's change the algorithms of our minds. It's so nicely put. I feel like that needs to be on a shirt. Let's change.
I was about to say, I was like, that's the title of this episode.
Title, if anyone needs to know, maybe Leeleshwari, that's the title. Let's change the algorithms of our mind. Beautiful. Thank you all so much for being here. We will be here the rest of the week. Tomorrow is Wednesday. And if you would like to dive deeper into Bhakti and studies, please check out bhakticenter.org. There's lots of different programs that you can check out there. And Achyuta and myself and Dayal Garanga, who's not here, are going to India in September. So anyone listening out there, it's so crazy. It does work. Like literally there have been people who've come to the pilgrimages or retreats. Like, how'd you find out about this? Instagram. I saw it on my explore page. It's like, interesting. Okay, cool. So anyone listening out there, whatever country you're listening from, if you want to come to India, please reach out to me and I can share more information. Thank you all so much for being here. And we will see you all tomorrow. Bye.